If there are any Boy Scouts in the audience, if they could please approach the dais. If there are any Boy Scouts in the audience, if they could please approach the dais.
Would board members please come to the board table? We're getting ready to begin. This April 27, 2017 regular meeting of the Fairfax County School Board will now come to order. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance, a moment of silence, and the performance of the national anthem by the Madison High School Orchestra under the direction of Aaron Eberly. Thank you so much. That was magnificent.
Madam Chair, if I could just, Madison High School, wow, the pride of Vienna. If you want to know, this is an award-winning group of musicians at Madison High School. And if you want to know why we continue to support fourth grade strings and all the arts in Fairfax County, this is why. Thank you.
So I'd like to say thank you, parents, for bringing these awesome students. And I didn't know if Principal Greg Hood was here this evening, but thank you, Mr. Hood.
Thank you. Earlier this evening, we had a closed meeting, and I need to certify that closed meeting. In order to comply with Section 2.2-3712D of the Code of Virginia, it's necessary for the board to certify that since the county school board Fairfax County School Board convened a closed meeting on April 27, 2017. To the best of each member's knowledge, only public business matters lawfully exempted from open meeting requirements and only such business matters as were identified in the motion convening the closed meeting were heard, discussed, or considered by the board during the closed meeting. Do I have a motion? Moved by Mr. Moon, seconded by Mrs. Strauss. All those in favor, please raise your hand, and that is unanimous. Thank you. A few announcements before we begin tonight's meeting. If you would like to review a copy of the agenda and any agenda item that's being discussed tonight, that information is on the table at the auditorium entrance. Tonight's agenda is available by going to School Board on FCPS homepage and selecting Board Docs under Upcoming School Board Meetings. The meeting is also being streamed live online. Select School Board from the full menu, then click on the Watch Live button on the School Board's meeting's webpage. Please turn off or silence your cell phone. I will now call on Ms. Chu for announcements.
Thank you, Chair. May 1st to May 5th is Teacher Appreciation Week. Teachers are real-life superheroes. They educate, innovate, encourage, and support, touching the lives of millions of children. Every day, over 15,000 teachers in Fairfax County Public Schools demonstrate their personal and professional dedication to providing an excellent education for the children in our community. Our teachers are committed to ensuring that all children develop their full potential for academic achievement. Teachers are influential in fostering in their students both healthful self-concepts and a sense of civic responsibility. Fairfax County Public Schools values the skills, creativity, and professionalism that characterizes our teachers. In addition, the month of May is Asian and Pacific American Heritage Month. Americans of Asian and Pacific ancestry have made significant contributions to the history and development of the United States in many fields of endeavor such as science, commerce, the arts, and the humanities. The Fairfax County School Board recognizes that an understanding of these contributions should be an integral part of the year-round education of all students. Since 1992, the President of the United States has proclaimed May to be Asian and Pacific American Heritage Month and has chosen this month to pay tribute to the generations of Asian and Pacific Islanders who have enriched Americans' history and are instrumental in its future success. Finally, May 10th will be School Nurse Day. School Nurse Day was established in 1972 to foster a better understanding of the role of school nurses in the educational setting. This annual event recognizes the contributions that school nurses make every day to improve the health and success of our nation's children. This year's theme is School Nurses, Better Health, Better Learning, and reflects the significant roles that school nurses have in healthcare in their school communities, as well as in modeling health and resiliency. School nursing is a specialized practice of professional nursing that advances the health and well-being of students and is an integral part of a quality school health program. School nurses promote health, safety, prevention, and wellness, intervene with actual and potential health problems, and provide case management services. They are an invaluable bridge connecting healthcare providers, public health, and families. The school system works closely with the Fairfax County Health Department to provide quality services to the children of Fairfax County Public Schools and recognizes May 10th as School Nurse Day in Fairfax County. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Chu. 2.04, Recognition of Better Hearing and Speech Month, and I call on Mrs. Huff.
Thank you. Since 1927, the American Speech Language Hearing Association has celebrated Better Hearing and Speech Month every year in May. The theme this year is Communication, the Key to Connection. This annual event provides opportunities to promote services that can improve the quality of life for those who experience problems with speaking and listening. An estimated 42 million people have communication disorders, and they impact 1 in 10 families. Currently, Fairfax County Public Schools provides speech and language services to more than 10,000 students. Audiologists and special education teachers also serve more than 500 deaf and hard of hearing students in class-based programs via base school itinerant services and in early childhood programs. FCPS annually observes and celebrates Better Hearing and Speech Month and encourages all citizens in our school community to recognize the efforts, dedication, and skills of the speech-language clinicians, audiologists, and teachers of students who are deaf and hard of hearing. At this time, I'd like to invite staff from the Department of Special Services, Deaf, Hard of Hearing, Visually Impaired Office to join me at the dais for a photo with the board.
Item 2.05, recognition of School Nutrition Employee Week, and I call on Ms. Derenak Kovacs.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is School Nutrition Employee Week on May 2nd through the 6th. Caring, trained, thoughtful, and professional. These are just a few words that describe today's school nutrition professional. School nutrition employees in Fairfax County Public Schools demonstrate daily their professional commitment to providing students with nutritious menu choices that reflect current research and meet the dietary guidelines for Americans. School nutrition employees must balance many roles and follow numerous federal, state, and local regulations to ensure safe and healthy meals are available in schools. They are trained sanitation and food safety experts and must manage financially self-sufficient programs. School nutrition professionals also provide nutrition education to students as well as healthy catering services to their community. They use their creativity to make the cafeteria a fun and welcoming place all year long and perform their jobs each and every day because they care passionately about the children they serve. FCPS school nutrition employees are committed to imparting food and nutrition knowledge and skills to students using the school cafeteria as the nutrition laboratory and are influential in preparing students to learn. At this time, I would like to invite staff from the Office of Food and Nutrition Services to join us at the dais for a photo with the board. And thank you all for being here tonight, and thank you for everything you do for our students.
All right, we now go to item 2.06, recognition of Children's Mental Health Awareness Day, and I call on Ms. McLaughlin.
Thank you, Ms. Evans. As a trained social worker, I am very honored to be reading this recognition. It's Children's Mental Health Awareness Day, marked for May 4th, 2017. The Federal Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration has declared May 4th to be the National Children's Mental Health Awareness Day. The national theme is Partnering for Help and Hope. The well-being of children has a profound, immediate, and lasting impact on our community. Nationally, over 1 in 5 children and youth have a mental health issue, and only half of children and youth with behavioral health issues receive treatment. Current national statistics show that approximately 36,000 Fairfax County children and youth have a diagnosable mental health condition, including 3,960 with significant impairment and 1,800 with extreme impairment. Unfortunately, there are multiple barriers preventing families from accessing timely and appropriate behavioral health services, including high deductible, high copay insurance plans, and lack of providers that accept Medicaid and other insurance. In their FY 2015 budget, the Fairfax County Board of Supervisors approved an expansion of behavioral health services for youth and families in order to address Fairfax youth behavioral health needs in our community. Through this expansion, Fairfax County Public Schools, Fairfax County Human Services, nonprofit agencies, families, and consumer organizations are together implementing a multi-year children's behavioral health system of care blueprint. This partnership has begun making progress towards addressing barriers to accessing services and improving the quality of services through coordinating prevention, early intervention, and intensive treatment services across the human services system, schools, and private providers. At this time, I would like to invite representatives of our systems of care to join me and my colleagues at the dais for a picture.
Item 2.07, resolution supporting the Unified Prevention Coalition of Fairfax County and its Parents Who Host Lose the Most campaign. I call on Ms. Scholes for the resolution.
As we head into prom and then graduation season, I'm very pleased to present this resolution. Whereas May 2017 begins the 11th year of Fairfax County Parents Who Host Lose the Most, Don't Be a Party to Teen Drinking campaign to educate parents and to increase awareness of compliance with Virginia underage drinking laws. And whereas during this time frame, data from 2008 through 2015 Fairfax Youth Survey shows that the Unified Prevention Coalition of Fairfax County, its collaborative prevention partners, and parents have successfully reduced 30-day use of alcohol for 8th, 10th, and 12th grade students overall from 27.9% down to 16.2%, a decrease of 11.7%, and binge drinking from the same grade levels from 13.7% to 7.5%, a decrease of 6.2%, whereas alcohol remains the most commonly used illegal drug by Fairfax County students, and underage alcohol use is associated with other drug use, prescription medicine abuse, alcohol poisoning, traffic crashes and fatalities, rape, depression, suicide, and educational failure, whereas underage youth say that they can easily get alcohol from family and friends, even though it is illegal in Virginia for persons under the age of 21 to consume or possess alcohol, and it is illegal for an adult to provide alcohol to a person under the age of 21. And whereas the Unified Prevention Coalition of Fairfax County, a nonprofit organization of over 60 collaborative partners, including school officials, county government agencies, treatment providers, concerned residents, businesses, students, parents, and community groups, has been instrumental in addressing underage and binge drinking, drinking and driving, correlated mental health disorders, and local resources for help. And whereas prevention efforts, including parents talking with their teens and modeling appropriate behavior, are critical and must be consistent, particularly during prom and graduation season. I didn't know that line was there. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Fairfax County School Board supports the positive work of the Unified Prevention Coalition of Fairfax County and recognizes the month of May 2017 as Parents Who Host Lose the Most in this month in Fairfax County. I so move.
Moved by Ms. Schultz. Do I have a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Wilson. All those in favor, please raise your hand. And that vote is unanimous.
And before I call everyone up, I just want to say, as a parent, as of last week, of my third male teenage or above driver, the work of parents with their teen drivers has, as of, I believe, about a week or 10 days ago, the Fairfax County crash rate came out. And last year, we were down over 100 crashes by teenage drivers ages 17 and above. That's the work of a collaboration by Unified Prevention Council and good parents. So I thank you, and I'd like to invite Landon Chu and Lizzie Andres from the Unified Prevention Coalition of Fairfax County Youth Council Executive Committee to please step forward to the podium. Are they here? You can clap. Okay. Actually, we don't have it. We don't have it set up. So, yeah. Why don't they come through to Ms. Chu's microphone?
Hello. Good evening, school board and Dr. Lockard. The Unified Prevention Coalition became an independent nonprofit organization in 2010. Since then, our staff, board directors, youth council, and volunteers have educated, advocated, and raised awareness of youth substance abuse issues. We have networked and engaged with community partners, both private and official, to advance our mission of keeping Fairfax County youth alcohol and drug-free. In collaboration with these partners, we have pushed for and implemented evidence-based strategies for prevention. The Parents Who Host Lose the Most campaign involves providing high schools with banners and fact cards urging parents to refrain from allowing underage drinking in their homes. The fact cards in both English and Spanish speak to Virginia law regarding the legal age to possess or drink alcohol, as well as valuable tips for parents. Please pick up your copy of the fact card on our table in the common area. Another one of our prevention campaigns is the Don't Drink and Drive social media campaign, meant to influence young adults aged 18 to 24 not to drink and drive. Funded by an SPF SIG grant, thousands of coasters were distributed in local area restaurants as well as on George Mason University and Nova Annandale campuses. Alcohol fact cards were distributed at sobriety checkpoints throughout the county by FCPD officers. We support the Washington Regional Alcohol Program in their efforts to create legislative change to alcohol-related issues. We also support Mothers Against Drunk Driving in their efforts to affect change in the drinking culture by utilizing their excellent parent communication materials. Thank you for recognizing May as Parents Who Host Lose the Most Month for 11 years running. This issue is of vital importance as we advocate for an alcohol and drug-free youth community in Fairfax County. Parents are still the greatest influence on youth.
Our prevention efforts reach into the youth community. The Unified Prevention Coalition Youth Council is made up of students representing 14 Fairfax County schools, both public and private. We meet twice a month to develop and implement prevention campaigns with the community. In keeping with the UPC's mission, we conduct an annual Project Sticker Shock. Project Sticker Shock is a Virginia ABC community education initiative, whereby bright, colorful stickers are placed on alcoholic beverage carriers and cases that might appeal to underage youth. This serves as a reminder for everyone that it is illegal to purchase alcohol from minors and the consequences thereof. Last winter, 20 of our Youth Council members visited 9 giant locations in 5 Fairfax County cities for Project Sticker Shock. This spring, we also collaborated with the Community Services Board in their tobacco prevention project, Counteract. 16 members of our Youth Council worked in team to survey tobacco realtors on marketing and sales practices. We visited 40 retailers and were able to obtain pledges from over 30 locations to continue their efforts to curtail the sale of tobacco products to youth. During Red Ribbon Week, we distributed prevention posters to middle schools urging rising high schoolers to stay away from drugs and alcohol. On a national level, we participated in the Drug Fact Week with the National Institute on Drug Abuse, with a dinner and game alongside the Grace Community Center Korean Youth Council, including an exciting game of Drug Fact Jeopardy. We are proud to collaborate with Fairfax County Public Schools, the Fairfax Falls Church Community Services Board, the Fairfax County Police Department, the Neighborhood and Community Services, as well as multiple Fairfax County PTSAs and PTSOs. Together, we are making a difference. Recent police data shows that alcohol-related crashes are down. Furthermore, FCPS Youth Survey data reported that 30-day regular use of alcohol is down, binge drinking is down, and the age youth began drinking is beginning to inch up. The Unified Prevention Coalition Youth Council is working hard to create a safer and healthier community for all of us. Thank you.
I want to say thank you to Landon and Lizzie for speaking tonight. And before I call everybody up, I would like to acknowledge Diane Eckert. Diane, go ahead, stand up. Diane is the interim executive director for the United Prevention Coalition, and Fairfax has announced that she's retiring in June. She has worked in the county, both at FCPS and UPC, for almost 21 years in health curriculum development and prevention education. On behalf of the board, I would like to thank you, and we would like to thank Diane for your many years of service on behalf of our children. At this time, Diane, will you please come forward with all of your people, and we're going to take a picture and acknowledge you.
If I could just add to that, just briefly, I've known Diane for most of those 21 years, not all of them, but most of them, and I just want to say what a fabulous, wonderful, tireless advocate she has been for the health and safety of children. So thank you so much, Diane Eckert, for all of your work for 21 years. Thank you.
You're going to be missed.
Citizen participation. The next order of business is citizen participation. Speakers are requested to limit their remarks to not more than 3 minutes. The school board will not hear statements involving issues that have been scheduled for public hearings, such as capital improvement program, budget, and boundaries. Complaints regarding individual students or school-based employees should be directed to the appropriate school principal or other school official. Speakers should refrain from using personally identifiable information in connection with an individual student. Speakers are expected to deliver their comments with the decorum and respect appropriate to the conduct of the public's business. Please be mindful that there are often young children in attendance at these meetings or watching at home, so language should be appropriate for all age levels. Thank you for your cooperation, and thanks to those who have come out to speak to us tonight. 10 citizens have signed up to address the board, and the first one is Mike Nee.
Good evening. Today I'm talking about the board governance, one of the most important elements in the strategic planning. The board oversees over $2.8 billion budget and 200,000 students. It's a hefty and a lofty job. A strong governance will ensure the mission of the board is carried out correctly. Unfortunately, there are 3 concerning trends affecting the board governance and the quality of education. Number 1, misuse the budget money. Number 2, misplace the education priority. And number 3, mismanage the contract system. Misuse budget money. This chart shows in the past 16 years, the budget increased 100%, almost doubled. The student enrollment, 20%. So the budget spent outpaced the student numbers 5 times. So the question is, where does the money go? Fresh off the press, this study shows population increased the past 16 years, 20%. The benefits increased 270%, quadrupled, tripled. So what happened here? The lion's share of the budget increase, or the benefits increase, it comes from the pension. We all know our county used the pension benefits using the index called COLA, cost of living adjustment. It's just a fixed rate factor around 3 to 5%. But the majority of the states and the federal use CPI, which is consumer purchase index, which is roughly 1% in the past 10 years. So by using COLA, you artificially inflated the pension liability. So the county has to pump in more money to make this deficit become unsustainable and unsupportable. So please stop misusing the budget money. Second thing is what? Second thing is misplace the student's priority. You still remember my speech last time. My son in the 4th grade still studying in the trailer classroom, no water access, no bathroom. It's disheartening and it's depressing. Our county, one of the most wealthiest counties in the nation, we have our students study in the substandard facility. It's just humiliating. This week, we have very depressing news come out, which is our crown jewel, Thomas Jefferson High School, lost the throne from number 1 ranking in 2014, now is number 6. So by misplacing the quality of education, we pay a dire consequence because we're going to lose the incoming home buyers. We're losing the taxpayers. We're losing the business. And we're losing talented teachers and principals. So please use the money in the right way and put the quality education in the priority. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Next is Dave Hatcher.
Good evening. I'm Dave Hatcher, longtime resident who remembers the days when my 2 children were enrolled in then some of the finest schools in the nation. I'm here to talk about the strategic plan document of creating a caring culture, or lack thereof. Welcome to authentic spiritual warfare. Many of us think that some of you harbor diabolical thoughts, far more interested in radical social engineering experiments than in protecting from sexual predators and abusers 99+% of students. 186,000 impressionable young kids. Who's going to guard their minds and bodies as their highest priority, or focusing on high-quality education? Who is really trying to protect these kids? Witness games of deceit, sneaking through a diversity proclamation 3 weeks ago, but giving concerned citizens only 2 days' notice so they could not sufficiently review it. Even blindsiding selected board members who were then pressured to vote with no urgency, and bragging about it in the local media. Such dishonest schemes have not gone unnoticed. How some of you unethically gave supporters inside information not provided to the rest of the public. Inside information, rather misguided loyalists showing up and giving the Potemkin appearance of apparent widespread support for a measure only they knew about, all meant to satisfy the politically correct. Dishonesty and cruelty stalk this room, spiritual warfare. Many of you were and still are poised to subject our kids heartlessly to mandated co-ed bathrooms and locker rooms, to include some emotionally distraught girls among tens of thousands of female rape and sexual assault survivors or strict religious adherents. Can't you see that? Some of you willing to impose oppressive penalties, including suspensions for kids using the wrong pronouns for something with no scientific or medical backing, undefined, and subjected to whims. Is that right, Ms. Chu? And who knows the real reason for Superintendent Garza's very abrupt departure to take a job with a vendor that supplies substantial services to this county reeks of conflict of interest violations. It happened on your watch as chairperson, Ms. Hines. Are there worrisome signatures on official documents that may implicate you, some of you, and lead to some or many sleepless nights? Now the baton is in your hands, Ms. Evans, and I'm sure your number one priority is to investigate and take action, right? We'll check. Many on this school board dissembled 2 years ago. Nothing is going to change. Now there are secretly co-ed bathrooms in some schools. We're not going away.
Thank you.
We intend to keep the pressure on, the more we see and learn, to call for legal action against some of you. Thank you. Go Caps.
John Kochka, to be followed by Robert Rigby, to be followed by Mimi Dash. Mr. Kochka?
I'm John Kochka. I reside at 6001 Arlington Boulevard in Falls Church, Virginia. Mr. Foster, creating a caring environment means that the Fairfax County School Board should not allow criminal sexual conduct, trespass, sexual harassment, or moral turpitude in Fairfax County Public Schools. Mr. Foster, were transgender students excluded from the Fairfax County Public Schools anti-discrimination policy prior to May of 2015? Yes or no? Were they excluded? I can't hear you, Mr. Foster.
Madam Chair, I don't think that's appropriate.
Yes,
for citizens.
Mr. Moon, you're an attorney. Were transgender students
Just
excluded?
keep in mind, this isn't a Q&A, so we're happy to hear your testimony, but we're not going to be answering your questions.
Creating a caring environment means that Fairfax County Public Schools should not allow criminal sexual conduct, trespass, sexual harassment, or moral turpitude in Fairfax County Public Schools. Ms. Evans, should a 13-year-old girl be subjected to a 50-year-old, 250-pound cross-dressing man when using the ladies' room in Fairfax County Public Schools? Yes or no? Ms. Hines, should a 13-year-old girl be subjected to a 50-year-old, 250-pound cross-dressing man when using the ladies' room in Fairfax County Public Schools? Mr. Moon, should a 13-year-old girl be subjected to a 50-year-old, 250-pound man, cross-dressing man, when using the ladies' room? Mr. Racklevine, should a 13-year-old girl be subjected to a 50-year-old, 250-pound man, cross-dressing man, when using the ladies' room? Let the record show the depraved leftists on the Fairfax County School Board cannot answer a clear moral question. A man inside a woman's restroom can view an unclothed woman inside a stall. Such gawking is clear case of sexual harassment and creates a hostile environment in violation of Title IX. On June 30th, 2016, Racer X, a 250-pound, 50-year-old cross-dressing male, was in the women's restroom in this very school at a school board meeting. A woman encountered Racer X and reported the trespass to the Fairfax school resource officers. The resource officers did nothing, and the trespass was never reported to the Fairfax County Police. The reprobate 8 recklessly endangered your children by passing Policy 1450 and violated the moral turpitude clause of Virginia Code, Section 22.1/315, which would be grounds for dismissal for a Fairfax County Public School teacher. Moral turpitude is shameful wickedness so extreme a departure from ordinary standards of honest, good morals, justice, or ethics as to be shocking to the moral sense of the community. It has also been defined as an act of baseness, vileness, or depravity in the private and social duties which one person owes to another or in society in general, contrary to the accepted and customary rule of right and duty between people. Policy 1450 is debased, vile, depraved, and unconstitutional, and the reprobate 8 are responsible
Thank you, Mr.
for it.
Kochka. Robert Rigby, to be followed by Mimi Dash, to be followed by Paul McClemens.
I yield my time to Kevin Hickerson.
Thank you, Robert. Good evening, Superintendent Lockard, Chairwoman Evans, and the FCPS School Board and staff. I'm Kevin Hickerson, President of the Fairfax Education Association. Teacher Appreciation Week is coming up. What a better way to show teachers that you care about them by valuing them and contributing to the security of their futures. When we talk about a caring culture, people need to feel that they will not have the rug pulled out from underneath of them when it comes to their salaries and benefits. Already, VRS has been degraded for new employees. The VRS hybrid plan was sold as a way for employees to have more direction and control over their retirement and to contribute what they needed for a secure future. What we have found in reality is that employees are often not able to take advantage of the employer match because of current salary and cost of living issues. This is creating a shortfall in their retirement portfolio. The ERFC is essential to our employees to counteract the state's actions. If not for the ERFC, this supplement, employees in Fairfax will be harmed even more by the state changes. I have been to nearly 60 buildings talking to employees about their potential changes to the ERFC benefit. When I talked to the newer employees, they were often confounded and incredulous that the school system they were just beginning to work for would change their retirement so abruptly. I had people tell me stories of moving from other counties specifically for the ERFC benefit. Others told me about how insulted they would be and that they would leave for another school system if the compensation package isn't what was advertised. FCPS has been feeling the pain of the teacher shortage now for a few years now. This is a national problem and will only continue. We increase our class sizes due to the budget shortfalls. We ask more of our employees. The last way we are going to recruit and retain an excellent workforce is by cutting the compensation and benefits package further. Paying for current salary increases by cutting the retirement does not increase compensation. It is simply a way to rearrange the deck chairs. The ERC is sustainable. It is appropriately funded. It is affordable. It is essential. It needs to be marketed better. Our retirement plan is not lavish. Our employees are not retiring and buying luxury cars, taking round-the-world vacations, and buying multi-million-dollar mansions. They're just trying to stay in their homes in Fairfax, which costs more than houses in many parts of the country, buy food in a high cost of living area, have a car just nice enough to get them through the labyrinth we finally refer to as normal traffic, and deal with the health care costs and an uncertain future. Our employees simply want to be able to retire with dignity and the respect they deserve after serving the Fairfax community for years. We should treat our current employees and future employees with that respect. Thank you.
Thank you. Mimi Dash, to be followed by Paul McClemens, to be followed by Hank Kim. Ms. Dash?
Chairperson Evans, Superintendent Lockard, and members of the school board. My name is Mimi Dash. I come here tonight representing the Fairfax Education Association retired and as a member of the Fairfax Employee Pension Coalition. I retired from FCPS after more than 30 years as an elementary classroom teacher. I was proud of my contributions to the system, but more importantly, I was proud of the impact I had on my students. Having said that, let me tell you that at the end of my 30-year period, I was exhausted, completely and utterly exhausted. But at the end of that tunnel, there was a retirement system that I could count on. I contributed to all 3 pension funds. I agreed to salary trade-offs in order to assure retirement security. It was the right decision. Although I can exist on the pensions I receive, it is adequate. It is not generous. In fact, I am within a few $1,000s of being eligible for tax relief. I know colleagues who already receive it. And that is with the legacy plan, not the plan that you have already eroded. Now this board is considering even more changes that have the potential of destabilizing a well-run system. This is being done to put more money in salaries. The savings are so minuscule that if you divide and gave that $4.7 million to every employee, that would be less than $200 per person per year. For that $200, employees can anticipate about a 3% loss of benefit upon retirement. We believe that suggested changes are short-sighted. They provide a minimum budget gain for an enormous long-term negative impact. These changes have the potential of forcing employees to work longer because they cannot afford to retire. This increases the cost to FCPS because they will be the employees at the top of the scale, adding potentially $10 million annually. I entered teaching because it was my calling. I was naive enough to believe that the system was as committed to doing what was best for students and employees. It didn't take me long to realize that becoming an activist was the only way to make things happen. But my commitment to the students never wavered. Improving working conditions and benefits may sound self-serving, but personal security and job satisfaction have a direct impact in the classroom. When employees feel secure and respected, they are free to be the best they can be at their jobs. Whether they're in front of the classroom, driving a school bus, pushing a broom or mop, or assisting in any of the other very important jobs that make FCPS great, they are able to be at their personal best. When the school board says that they are committed to a caring culture, doesn't that include its employees? Are we trying to attract people to a short-term job, or are we committed to attracting people to a noble career? Every election year, we hear every politician talk about their commitment to quality education. We are telling you that supporting quality employees is the only way to provide quality education. Please stop balancing budgets on the backs of your already overburdened employees. Do the right thing. Maintain ERFC as it is.
Thank you. Paul McClemmons, to be followed by Hank Kim. Mr. McClemmons.
Good evening, Dr. Lockhart, Chairman Evans, Student Representative Ms. Chu, and esteemed school board members. My name is Paul McClemmons, President of the Fairfax County Federation of Teachers. I represent many of the people who educate our county's youth, preparing them to compete in a highly competitive global economy. At the beginning of this school year, FCPS started off with over 250 unfilled teaching positions. This continued to be a problem throughout the year, with the choice being to fill those positions with substitutes and out-of-field teachers. We hear comments from interns and student teachers at George Mason University indicating that FCPS is not the place that they hope to teach. Teachers are leaving Fairfax in droves and finding better positions with better benefits and working conditions. The workload initiatives and endless meetings continue, even after the administration's promise to take a look into them. Our classes continue to get bigger and bigger. You've called for a school board task force for ERFC. Previous task force contained members who were selected by school board members, all with their own agendas, minus the employee considerations. The results were written and sealed before taking into consideration your employees. And now you seek to undermine our retirement system security, a benefit we cherish and need. For what? To see these trends continue? We are tired of being the ATM of the school board. It will not and has not been a stretch to educate our members with these facts. In this specific case, the monetary value of the savings are quite small. So we will be treating some teachers as second-class citizens and for very little gain. This doesn't make a lot of sense to me. ERFC is a well-thought-out, sustainable system agreed upon by previous school boards because it works. It ensures that new, less expensive teachers with new ideas and training come into our schools to take the place of those who have served this school system well for more than 30 years. Leadership comes from you. You need to do better. We want to work with you, but you need to be willing to work with us. The Board of Trustees' deep commitment has built a system that has served our and the community's interests. We need to be listening to their expertise and direction and avoid imposing conditions from a politically motivated task force. The budget has not been finalized, and from your questions being presented to Aon at the school board work session on Monday, it was clear many school board members do not know enough about ERFC to make these decisions that affect FCPS employees. We can live with some of the changes for new hires only: minimum retirement at age 55, the change to interest credit rating, and making the COLA CPI capped at 4%. But we can't accept changes that changing the deal that has been promised to non-vested employees. We also can't accept increasing the averaging period for the final averaging salary from 3 years to 5 years. With that said, it troubles us how little analysis the board is working off of. The rule of 90 has been dropped at the last minute, but has the board studied the impact of having more teachers at higher steps or the impacts of the kids in the classroom? I'm not aware of any such work. In closing, I want to share one testimonial real quick. This is my 5th year working with FCPS. I've dedicated my efforts to bettering FCPS student lives. If FCPS changes ERFC, I believe many wonderful, talented teachers would leave to seek other employment. Please do not change ERFC. Caitlin, thank you.
Thank you. Hank Kim, to be followed by Deborah Hammer, to be followed by Blanca Robles. Mr. Kim?
Yes, thank you. Good evening, Chairwoman Evans and members of the school board. My name is Hank Kim. I am a proud resident of the Mount Vernon district, and I'm here to talk as a parent of 2 children in Woodley Hills Elementary School, in the elementary school, as well as an expert in public pension financing and administration. So my job here tonight is to provide a little bit more of a quantitative set of data versus to support the qualitative testimony you just heard regarding the sustainability of the ERFC. In terms of my professional qualifications, I am the Executive Director and Counsel for the National Conference on Public Employee Retirement Systems. It is the largest trade association for public sector pension plans, representing over 500 plans here in the United States, as well as a handful of plans up in Canada, and includes even a couple of plans in Australia. And as the Association for Public Plans, we do what a typical association does, which is we provide advocacy, we conduct research, and we provide education to stakeholders of public plans. So tonight, what I want to focus in on is the middle point, which is the research. And let me begin with numerous research regarding the efficiency of a defined benefit pension system. And because of the following qualities that are baked into a defined benefit plan, it is by far the most efficient means of saving for retirement. So because it is a defined benefit plan where you pool assets and you pool the risk, it is perpetually young. It is also professionally managed instead of you looking at your individual account maybe once a month or maybe even once a year. These accounts are managed and looked at on a consistent and regular basis. And because they are pooled, there is an economy of scale and negotiated reductions in fees. And because of this, because of these things that are baked into a defined benefit plan, they are almost 50% more efficient than individual accounts. And because ERFC is a DB plan, it's these same qualities are also baked into the ERFC. In terms of specific research regarding the ERFC, our organization conducts a survey of our membership. We've been doing it on an annual basis since 2011. And our most recent study came out in December 2016, and it is by far the most current set of data available regarding defined benefit plans. And unlike some of the other data that are out there where it largely is comparing plans that are really large compared to Fairfax County, it's sort of like comparing Fairfax County to the state of California. Our data shows, and our data is mostly state and local plans, local plans. 80% of respondents are very similar to Fairfax.
You could just wrap up, Mr. Kim.
Yes. The point being is ERFC, the results that we've shown from our survey very much mirrors the results in terms of return experience and the cost efficiency of ERFC. So for those things, we think that ERFC should be maintained and sustained. Thank you.
Thank you. Deborah Hammer, to be followed by Blanca Robles, to be followed by Frederick Costello. Deborah Hammer. Is Deborah Hammer here?
Yeah, I couldn't hear you first. Okay. Good evening. My name is Deborah Hammer. I'm a Fairfax County resident. Tonight I am addressing Strategic Plan Creating a Caring Culture. The U.S. Constitution is the longest lasting constitution of any country. The reason for this is revealed in Federalist 1, which speaks to whether societies of men are capable or not of establishing government from reflection and choice, or whether they are forever destined to depend on their political constitutions on accident and force. This makes sense to me. Good decisions are made by thinking through topics as opposed to implementing decisions or policies without thinking through unintended consequences. Madison describes in Federalist 10 that a faction is a group of citizens, a majority or a minority of the whole, who are united and motivated by a common interest that is adverse to the rights of other citizens and society as a whole. So this begs the question, why would the minority who want to use the opposite bathroom be allowed to infringe on the rights of the majority not to have them in their bathroom? The Equal Rights Amendment gives us equal rights, not extra rights. Here are some concerns. Boys across the county are having fun with the idea of the opportunity to get in the girls' bathroom and locker rooms. Girls are feeling anxiety about this prospect. There are stories abound across the United States of abuse. This can be a slippery slope. Can we identify as another race and qualify for minority scholarships? Can we identify as a senior citizen and get discounts? Can we identify as animals and then build stalls and cages for our students? Most of us have heard of the lizard man. What about the boy in Alaska winning the track record as a girl? Can I practice law if I identify myself as a lawyer? As I understand it, the issues come down to harassment, bullying, and the staggering 41% suicide rate. Those are the issues that need to be addressed. Since we know that only a minority of children who experience cross-gender identification will continue to do so into adolescence and adulthood, are we harming them by prolonging this? Professionals are questioning right now whether being transgender is a trend. Federalist 70, Hamilton asserts that the Republican principle does not require that government act on every sudden breeze of passion that may influence the views of the people. Although people usually intend the public good, they do not always reason right about the means of promoting it. True story, woman in D.C. identifies herself as a man, puts it on her insurance form. She's now pregnant. She goes to a D.C. program, says, I need help. They said, we can't help you. There are no insurance codes for pregnant men. For those of you who have not thought through this and who are promoting this transgender policy, you own this and any other unintended consequences. As elected officials, remember Federalist 71. These politicians and statesmen who have been the most celebrated for the soundness of their principles and for the justice of their views are best calculated to conciliate the confidence of the people and secure the privileges and interests. Dahlia, this is my fourth request for a meeting. I would like answers to these.
Thank you for coming.
I would like answers.
Blanca Robles, you're up next. Blanca Robles.
Good evening. My name is Blanca Robles, and I'm a Fairfax County resident, mother of 3, grandmother of 3, and a parent of children in the Fairfax County Public Schools. I would like to address the topic of the strategic plan, Creating a Caring Culture. Your stated plan is to foster a responsive, caring, inclusive culture where all feel valued, supported, and hopeful. A closer look proves a lack of care and support for Christian values, as seen in the family life education. In elementary schools, you are indoctrinating our children with concepts that go against our Christian teachings about homosexuals by using child-friendly words like two mummies or two daddies. And in the process, you instill notions that these lifestyles are appropriate, notions which are in contradiction to our faith's teachings. I do not wish for my taxpayer dollars to be used to undermine my child's religious faith. We teach our children to respect their teachers and those in authority over them. We teach our children that all people are made in the image and likeness of God, and as such are due respect and dignity in their humanity. But not every action, deed, or activity that man contrives is right or appropriate. It is the proper place of each family to teach in accordance with their religious views, or lack thereof, issues about family and sexuality. By 7th grade, you are teaching about homosexuality, bisexuality, transgenderism, and in 8th grade, gender fluidity. Concepts long understood, controlled by one's feelings, and not proven by genetics. Still, one cannot help but feel compassion for those struggling with their sexuality. Nevertheless, boys, no matter how finely they apply their makeup, have no business in the girls' bathroom or changing room. Young teenage girls deserve privacy. Your intention to be all-inclusive, all-allowing, has lost sight of the truth that God created them, male and female. And as an institution of learning, you should teach that rather than add confusion to the already complicated teenage years. What you teach in schools carries the weight and authority of the institutions of learning. So what you teach is important because children learn to trust and believe what they learn at school. Yet contradicting God's teachings will come to no good for our children, our families, and our communities. A lot is said about the separation of church and state, and yet it seems to me—
Would you please wrap up?
You have imposed, with a religious zeal, teachings you hope now to move into the area of emotional and social health, making these lessons mandatory with no opt-out option. The state, it seems, has created a secular
Ms. Robles,
religion
I'm afraid your time is up. Thank you for
void
coming out tonight.
of God in the guise of a caring culture. Thank you very much.
Frederick Costello.
My name is Fred Costello. I live at 12864 Tewksbury Drive. You have trouble hearing me? See if I can help that. Okay. I'm here tonight because I'm concerned about each one of you individually, okay, personally. You seem to want to do what's right and good rather than simply what you'd have to do to get reelected, okay? The board's goal of caring culture shows that you care, okay? Long ago, society lived by the adage, might makes right. And you, as a board, are in the petty position of might. Society started improving about 2,000 years ago. We were taught that might is not always right. The Family Life Education Program is a case in point. Your might claims it is right. However, it does not teach how to be a good parent, despite the fact that much child and student misbehavior and criminal activity can be traced to poor parenting, poor family life. Today, divorce ends 50% of marriages, but the program does nothing to reduce this rate. It says nothing about the lives of the large segment of society that have divorce rates of only 1%. Instead of parenting, the FLE program drills and drills year after year like no other subject that family life education is sex life education. The students logically tie the name of the program to its content. The program would be more aptly titled Pregnancy-Free Sex at Any Age. You appeal to the students' base drives rather than the students' hunger for ideals. So back to my concern for each of you. When you are dying, or perhaps shortly after death, you'll be haunted by the great harm you have done, misleading hundreds of thousands of children about family life. I urge you, for your sake, to avoid such a sorry burden. Take action now, before your dying moments, by making the FLE program teach the skills needed for a happy, married, family life instead of an active sex life. Cultivate a caring culture. Get the divorce rate down to 1%. Make that your measurable goal. Make life better for the students, your teachers, and our society. You have the might and the responsibility to effect such a change.
Thank you. Item 2.02, Student Representatives Matters, and I call on Ms. Chu.
Is this working? Oh, thank you, Chair. Just first, again, I'd like to thank all the speakers. Every single time it's very difficult to follow from all the speakers, and I'd like to give a very special thank you to a good friend of mine, Mrs. Mimi Dash, who I met very recently and who I found just has the most amazing values to share with this community and who I truly believe has given a great set of insight about ERFC. And because I'm a student, I don't know very much about retirement, and I will not for quite some time. But through Ms. Dash, what I've learned is invaluable to me, and I really resonate with the values that she shared today. In addition, Real Food for Kids actually released its 2017 FCPS Student School Food Survey, which can also be found on Mr. McElveen's newsletter. And for the purposes of improving school health and nutrition in the coming years, I urge all students to take the time to go online and find this survey or search for it in any other way by contacting me or the student representative to RFFK. They're really looking for students to join the program and join a board so that student input can increase and so that they can craft better foods and better nutritional services for next year. In addition, in light of the caring culture discussion today, at my own high school, this week is Stress Less, Laugh More Week, and at many other high schools, because AP weeks are coming up, mental health advocacy groups are doing the same. So at this time, I just want to give a little personal 2 cents on the importance of taking the step back. This AP week is so difficult for so many students. But if there's one thing I learned this year, it's that the support of our parents and our stakeholders and our teachers is so important. So for all the students out there, I urge you to take a break this weekend before the stressful week comes up. Take some time with your family, with your friends, because this is something that I know all high schoolers, middle schoolers, and elementary schoolers are going to face one day. So with that, with this caring culture discussion coming up, I'd just like to emphasize one more time the importance of this cross-communication between teachers and students. Seeing as it's Teacher Appreciation Month soon, I'm seeing so often on the school visits that I take this great need for more appreciation for our teachers. If they only get one lunch a year, I don't think that's really sufficient. If they only get one lunch a year to celebrate their contributions to the school. So as we really discuss this topic today, I'd just like to urge everybody to think more about how we can have a greater focus on the communication between students and teachers and really value the employees that I'm so thankful for, like Ms. Dash. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Chu. We now turn to item 3.02, Goal 2, the Caring Culture Report, and I call on Mrs. Strauss for the motion.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I move that the school board approve the strategic plan Goal 2 Caring Culture report as detailed in the agenda item.
Is there a second? Seconded by Ms. Hines. Mrs. Strauss, would you like to speak to your motion?
Yes, thank you. Very briefly, this report was presented to us at length at the last public school board meeting. It was also discussed at our last work session. This report is one of 4 yearly reports on the work to date and progress of the various aspects of our strategic goals. So this report dealt with caring culture. Among a wealth of information that we discussed, surveys regarding climate surveys within schools, and data that's reported from students, parents, and teachers. We discussed student discipline incidents, the positive results of the SOSA position. We looked at HR customer service, communication, the new website, which continues to be a work in progress. We looked at overall health and wellness of both our employees and our students, including mental health and sleep, anti-bullying and harassment efforts, and we looked at stress data for students and staff, and also global citizenship and service learning. It was a very large and in-depth report. I want to thank staff. It was very, very informative, very broad, and gives us, as need be, some roadmaps to go forward and to continue to improve. Work is never done, but thank you very much for your effort.
Ms. Hines, would you like to speak to your second?
Sure, just briefly. I think a couple years ago when we worked so hard on putting together our strategic plan and our goals and measures, I think we were all hopeful that it would be a living document that every quarter of every year would bring us some useful, really useful information to help us as a board guide the school system to meet the overarching goals that we have for the community. And staff has just always really stepped up to the task and given us some great information based on what we ask. I think it's fair to say that every year we have an obligation as a board to look again at the strategic plan and the goals and measures and make sure that we are still getting the information that we think the community needs and that we need, and that we're not asking staff to do a lot of work that is not actually valuable to us. So in that way, it continues to be a living document. But I just really can't thank staff and I for all the work that went into this. I believe that the report does answer very clearly and with a lot of really important information what we have asked for. So thank you.
Ms. Corbett-Sanders.
Yes. Thank you. Both Ms. Schultz and I had the pleasure of managing the work session when we discussed this report. And I want to send out a special thank you to the staff for presenting the report in a very focused manner at that work session to really focus on the why. What was the relevance of the incredible amount of data that was provided in the report and making the crosswalk between the various individual data points to how it relates to the need for policy changes or what we've learned from multiple data points, pulling them together in aggregate. And so I just want to make sure that we capture the extra mile in which the staff went in presenting the materials at that work session, and hope to see that as a model for future work sessions.
Mrs. Schultz.
I would like to, I'm not often an echoer of one of my colleagues. I would try to keep us on target, but I will say that this board continues to ask of staff, in particular, more relevant data. And I specifically wrote on here, Mr. Ramey, I think that your presentation to the board and your work with Ms. Corbett-Sanders and myself in advance of the meeting really helped pull together an executive summary for the work session that's adding clarity to a very heavy data-centric report. And I don't know if Ms. McLaughlin's switch is on. I'm going to anticipate that which is coming, and a similar comment that I shared with our Goal 1 report. We're not there yet as a board in terms of what we ask of staff. Dr. Lockard has begun to guide us very well as a part of what we're looking for and kind of guiding us and limiting us to that which the board needs to focus on. But nonetheless, in a system of our size, when you see things like 50, I think it was 56 or 58% of teachers trust the people that they work with, and that's not called out as a statistic that needs to be identified as to what's wrong, and an acknowledgement that that's something that we're going to work on, or that upwards of 70% of our students either feel high degrees of stress or moderate amount of stress, and that has to be called out and looked at specifically. We're starting to get there. There's a lot to manage in a school system with 188,000 students and 40,000 full and part-time employees. And this report, I anticipate that by next year this time, both for my colleagues and for staff, that there's going to be even a greater synthesis of the amount of information that comes in that to the board allows the board to govern better. When staff can take a look at information and say, look, here's a compendium of information, and these are the things about which we are concerned. These are the things that are going well. These are the things that cause us concern. And these are the things that we believe that you, as a Board of Governors, trustees, or a school board, need to focus on that could potentially involve you changing policy, making policy, or changing practices by our guidance. Then we become better stewards of the system, better stewards not only for the taxpayers, but better stewards for employees, better stewards for families and for children, much of what is indicated in this report. So I thank you for working with us. I know Ms. Corbett Sanders and I kind of took us, we asked a lot of you in a short amount of time, considering everything that's going on. But I am appreciative of it, and I think that it's the beginning of the work that is going to really bear fruit down the road as we continue to hone and improve the information that we seek so that we make better decisions.
Ms. McLaughlin?
So I do appreciate the positive remarks shared by my colleagues about the Goal 2 Caring Report. And as I shared during the board's work session with my colleagues, I struggle with supporting and affirming this report tonight. And as I share with them, it's because while Ms. Schultz is correct, it is data-centric. There's a lot of data in it. It is important that data then has essential analysis that tells us what is the strategic direction we wish to go forward on. What does the data actually tell us in order to then determine the strategic direction going forward? And I don't believe the report gave us that. And it might be that some of my colleagues kind of view the report differently. I don't necessarily lay this at the feet of staff. And some say, well, if it didn't have it in there, that's our fault as a board. I think that certainly we're very blessed to have highly capable staff with doctorate degrees, and so I think there is a general understanding that when you produce data in a report, and it's an annual report, you would want to see analysis and conclusions and where we're going. However, even taking my colleagues at where they are on this, which is we didn't make that clear, so this is what we have, and if we want something different, we need to communicate going forward. As I shared with our leadership team, I can actually accept that premise as well. But what I can't accept is that our board then has a responsibility to say, this was a great draft report. Perhaps there was a miscommunication on what our board expectations are of what an annual report should tell not just this board of 12, but what it tells our community, what it tells our families, what it tells our employees. And I don't think the report is there yet. I'm not asking for the sun and the moon and the stars, but I would invite anyone who ends up being curious as to why I won't be voting for a report that is very important to me. I mentioned earlier tonight, I'm a trained social worker. I couldn't be more concerned and dedicated to ensuring a caring culture for all of our employees, our students, our families, and key stakeholders. But I just feel that this report is not complete, and I wish that since there isn't a firm deadline, we would perhaps refine it and I think better reflect the great system that we are. But there's a difference of philosophy sometimes. So to the audience members, whether here or at home, watching, I just wanted you to understand my vote this evening. And I do want to echo appreciation to the staff, and not just the report, but more importantly, the great work you are doing in our schools, in our division, your commitment to really wanting to improve the great caring culture that this board and our community so much wants and appreciates the great work that happens every day in Fairfax County Schools.
Thank you. Before I take the, I see Ms. Derenak Kaufax.
I just wanted to just say, I think there was so much insightful information in this report, and I thank you to the staff who not only did the work, but then had to take the work that they did and provide data and analysis on that with respect to the Caring Culture Goal 2 report. We had a lengthy work session on it, and I do believe that the many next steps talked about some of the things that we can improve upon, and I do believe that, as Ms. Hines said, you know, when you look at a strategic plan, it needs to be nimble and I think you said living, breathing document rather than one that sits up there on a shelf. And so as we look at that and we take this summer to, you know, again, have our retreat where we will hopefully have, again, looking at what we need and what we want and taking the analysis from our next steps. I think we are at a place. I will support this. I thank everyone who, again, did the hard work on this. I appreciate your time, and we're moving forward, and I think the data that was there was excellent. I think we can continue to build and grow, and I thank you. This is one of those, when we put together the strategic plan, I remember when we came up with the caring culture piece and how important that was to all of our stakeholders in the community and how important it was to all of us. And it took us a while to get, you know, something that's right in front of your face, caring culture. You know, we couldn't find the words exactly. What does this mean? We want to be responsive. We want to be, you know, we want our employees to feel happy. We want them to feel valued. And it, you know, finally caring culture was a very simple bucket, which we put it all in, but it's not so simple as we can see. And I'll be supporting this. Thank you for all you've done to this point, and I look forward to continuing growing this.
Thank you. Before I take the vote, I will just add to what Ms. Derenak Kaufax said. Just for those watching this, there's a huge amount of amazing data in this report and a lot of excellent news about the progress that we're making on student health and wellness. So I did want to point out that we have had a very lengthy discussion of a lot of the details. So if you don't see us discussing and debating tonight, that's because we had a very lengthy work session on it where we talked about a lot of the specifics. So this is excellent work. I can enthusiastically support this report. Of course, we always strive for improvements in health and wellness, but I can see from this that we are headed in the right direction. I appreciate so much the work from staff and everyone from here to the school level, and cooperating as well with parents and students and the community. So with that, I will call for the vote. The motion is that we approve the strategic plan goal 2, caring culture, as detailed in the agenda item. All those in favor, please raise your hand. Hines, Palchik, Huff, Schultz, Corbett Sanders, Strauss, Evans, Moon, Wilson, Derenak Kaufax, McElveen. All those opposed? McLaughlin? That motion passes. We now go to item 4.03, ERFC analysis. This is a continuation of a discussion that we had in February. I'm going to call on Mr. Moon to restate and remake the motion.
Thank you, Madam Chair. As you stated that there was a motion on February 9th, seconded to, and this is basically a reading of what was already placed on the table for board's consideration, If you could bear with me, let me get the exact wording. I move that the School Board Director, ERFC Board of Trustees, to initiate the process to implement the following ERFC plan modifications effective July 1, 2017. All ERFC members, 1, lowering the interest credit rating on ERFC members' accounts from 5% to 4%. ERFC 2001 members hired on or after July 1, 2017, and non-vested members as of June 30th, 2017. 2, instituting a minimum retirement age of 55. 3, increasing the period for calculating the final average salary from 3 years to 5 years. 4, changing the cost of living adjustment to equal 100% of the consumer price index with a cap of 4%, and present the ERFC 2001 amended plan documents to the school board for approval by June 2017.
Is there a second? Seconded by Mrs. Strauss. Mr. Moon, would you like to speak?
Actually, Madam Chair, as I expect amendments to arrive to be discussed, I'm going to wait until we have an opportunity to discuss amendments first.
Mrs. Strauss?
No, I don't wish to speak at this time. We just need to put this on the table. There will be further discussion and amendments. Thank you.
Okay. And with that, our first amendment is, I call on Ms. McLaughlin for an amendment.
Thank you, Ms. Evans. I move to defer consideration of the ERFC plan changes to no later than May 24th, 2018. Deferring consideration of plan changes will provide time for the school board and the board of supervisors to work together in developing any proposed pension plan changes for inclusion in their respective FY 2019 budgets.
Is there a second? Seconded by Mr. Wilson. Ms. McLaughlin, would you like to speak to your amendment?
Yes, thank you. I very much appreciate the amount of time that not only my colleagues and I have invested in trying to understand as much as possible the intricacies of the ERFC supplemental pension. I also appreciate how much our community has been involved in trying to bring their voice to this very important decision before the board. And it is in light of some recent developments that I came forward today with this request to defer consideration. And to my colleagues, I will just say that when we were at our work session on Monday, one of the questions I asked was if staff had created a working group with key stakeholders, including our employees, on any proposed ERFC changes, and the answer was no. And I believe that if you read the Board of Supervisors budget guidance that they issued just 2 days ago, one of the key pieces that they are making a promise to their employees is that as they deliberate and consider any potential changes for this next year, is their commitment to involving their employees and key stakeholders in the conversation. Given that there is no actual urgency in terms of the sustainability and the viability of ERFC to make this vote tonight, given that many of us have asked for and believe in the value of the school board and the Board of Supervisors partnering on our existing pension plans so that we can have greater parity, equity, and sustainability of our pension plans to all of our employees. Whether you work for the schools, whether you work for the county, you serve us in this amazing county of Fairfax. We are one Fairfax. And I do believe that if you look at so many of the amendments from all of our colleagues that just materialized in the last 24 hours. The fact that one of them even talks about the rule of 90, and yet we haven't had an opportunity to have the full analysis of what that means. We haven't had a chance to engage with our stakeholders on what that means. I do believe that my amendment to defer is actually in the best interest of this school system. It's the best interest of our employees. It's the best interest of this board to be able to make the most thoughtful decision. It's in the best interest for us to partner with the Board of Supervisors in having this comprehensive conversation. So I humbly ask my colleagues to please recognize that there is no pending need for us to have to do it tonight. We did hear from our Chief Operating Officer, Susan Quinn, that if we were to defer and try to vote on this next month with our budget, that's problematic because they need to be able to send this over to have the external auditors do the valuation actuarial work. But postponing this for up till next year is not problematic. And I know that because one of my other amendments tonight, when I spoke to staff about it, essentially it ends up kind of not having any cost savings right now, but it would most closely mirror what the county government does currently for its employees in the FCERS. So all those things being said, in light of the fact that many of our colleagues were still asking questions up until a few hours ago today, I truly hope that people will support this amendment to defer. I think this is really the best way to serve our employees.
Mr. Wilson?
Thank you, Madam Chair. One of the very first things that I commented on when we first began discussions of modifications to ERFC and the changes contemplated would have affected current employees was that promises have been made. And any time you go back on promises that are made, no matter how good the justification, there's going to be a sense of betrayal. And I think that the obvious and overwhelming dislike of the proposed modifications by the employees and the retirees of Fairfax County Public Schools is pretty evident that there is a feeling that there's been a promise that's not going to be kept if we vote in favor of these changes. In addition to that, and this is something that I've only learned very recently, but it occurred to me today as I was thinking about where these proposed changes came from, is that it's my understanding that the Board of Trustees for ERFC has not actually voted to recommend these changes. We did receive a letter from ERFC saying that they did not recommend making changes to vested employees. But it's my view that the board of ERFC has a duty to actually vote and make recommendations if this school board is going to enact changes. And that has not happened. And I think that they have the expertise, which one of our speakers tonight pointed out might be lacking among this school board, to evaluate the condition and long-term condition of the ERFC in the county. I should clarify that I've never felt that we can't make changes, because if we're going to bankrupt the county, if this is a sinking ship and if we have to make repairs, then we have to do that. But I think employees will understand that when that case has been made. And I have not been convinced with the presentations that we've received by the school board that we are in that situation. I'd also mention that I believe the Board of Supervisors has and is contemplating to begin work with the task force to look at county pensions together. And I think Ms. McLaughlin was mentioning this, and I think our changes to the Fairfax County Public Schools plan should be made in a manner that is consistent and in concert with Fairfax County's plan. And that just makes sense. These are county liabilities that are for the county employees, including Fairfax County Public Schools employees. That hasn't happened. So again, I would say that it's worth the time that we invest to spend the time to review and discuss and understand, and then develop changes that treat all of the employees and retirees equitably, while at the same time providing a wonderful benefit to attract new employees to Fairfax County. And the final point that I think warrants consideration by the board before we vote on it is that there, in fact, is a 2014 Attorney General Herring opinion with applicability to the plan changes that we're contemplating tonight. And that opinion has not been discussed by the board with our council, but I believe that it raises significant questions that our board needs to understand. So if we are going to go forward with that vote, I would request, Madam Chair, that we have a short break to go back into closed session to receive the information from our general counsel regarding the interpretation of the Attorney General's opinion.
Are you making a motion, Mr. Wilson?
Only if this fails, Madam Chair.
All right.
And so with that, Madam Chair, that's all I have.
Ms. Corbett-Sanders?
This whole conversation is one that is incredibly frustrating, I think, to me and to many of the people on this board and in this room, because we are at the situation we're in because of the chronic underfunding of our county school system. And the chronic underfunding is not solely in the hands of the Board of Supervisors. It is in the hands of our state and federal funders as well. And so as this board has been handed an incredibly difficult situation with a budget shortfall, we have been kind of our backs up against the wall to look at ways of addressing chronic underfunding. And from the very beginning on the discussion of the ERFC, I have said, and I remain committed to ensuring that we honor the covenant we have made with the employees that we have on our payroll today. And so for me, this is a critical piece, that people that we have offered employment and they have taken us up on that employment should know what they are being offered. And going forward, if we make changes to the ERFC, that those changes should be done in a manner that is consistent and coherent with other pension programs that are available to county employees. Here in Fairfax County, the other pension programs have changed over time, as has the ERFC. And so making changes to the ERFC is not something that hasn't been done before, and I think it's been done for various reasons. At this point, any changes to the ERFC are contemplated in a manner to ensure that it's sustainable for the long haul, for all of the employees that are currently on our payroll, as well as employees that we would like to attract to coming to the county. Because the ERFC is a unique program that is not available in our neighboring jurisdictions. And so we need to do everything in our power to ensure that that is a sustainable program. But we also need to, at the same time, honor the covenant that we have with our existing employee base. And so that's why I think that we welcome the discussion here tonight, but we also need to assure everybody in this room that everybody on the school board does care and values the commitment you all have made to us and to our students in ensuring student success, and that it is a covenant that we plan on honoring.
Seeing no other board members wanting to speak, Mrs. Hoppe.
Thank you. I wasn't sure if I should speak now or wait, but I really don't have a good sense of where this motion is going, so I feel like I might need to speak up now. I agree with a lot of what Ms. Corbett-Sanders said, and I listened carefully to all of the speakers tonight, and I do feel like we need to be careful with how we communicate what we're doing, why we're doing it, how we're doing it. I think we have spoken about this for a long while and communicated with employees for a long while. And I think that I also agree with Ms. McLaughlin in her comments about keeping, also with what the county is doing, with the Board of Supervisors have done where they are. And I actually also do feel that we should be only looking at new hires and not people who we have already hired. But I did want to see, and I'm sorry I didn't give you a heads up, Ms. Benedicto, but would you be able to put up there, I had asked a budget question a while ago, and staff was great to work on it, about what does Fairfax County Public Schools, now that we infused the $40 million last year plus the step in the MSA, how are we doing compared to the market on total compensation? And that answer was released for us. And I'm not sure of the exact percentage there, but it looks like we're pretty close to what our goal was for our employees being 95 to 105% of market, pretty much all along the line, and in many places above the market. So I think we need to continue having a conversation and making sure that we are dialoguing with all of the information. And it's concerning to me because I hear things from constituents and concerned employees that they've agreed, and I'm just going to quote some of the things I heard tonight, agreed to salary trade-offs, and that there were 250 slots open and that teachers are leaving in droves for better benefits. And then I look at the reality of what we're offering, and one of the places I hear that our teachers are leaving to is Arlington. Well, their supplemental retirement is a 401A match, where they match 0.4% with an employer contribution. With ERFC this last year, we were 5.6%, and in order to sustain the fund, we're going up to 6.4% and projected to be continuing to go up, which is, in terms of a long-term solvency marker, not what we would want to see. So I do think it's important to know that we as a board are trying to be responsible in and how we show that we value our employees. A year ago, I continually heard about the need to increase salary and was full-on support for the $40 million influx, the STEP, the MSA. I continue to be in support of the increase in salary because I am hearing by and large that teachers are leaving for a better salary, but we can't continue to say that we're not going to retain teachers if we get rid of VRFC and we're raising salary, and here we are on our comparison to the market. And so in some sense, I know I'm not actually really saying where I am, but I think that these are important points to make, because in some sense I feel like I want to get the retirees in a room with the new employees and understand where everyone really is, because at the time you're saying you're leaving for better salary, but you're also saying if you don't give the ERFC, we're leaving because we don't have the supplemental benefits, and these other jurisdictions we're matching them at least, if not better. And so if we're losing teachers and not retaining them, we're not paying the employees correctly. And that's a huge concern. And we know that in our dollars, we don't have the ability to continue doing both. And it's important to also note for me that the ERFC vote is not about balancing the budget. It is about long-term sustainability of our operating fund so that we don't have to keep making these decisions, so that as we work to give our teachers a more competitive salary, there are dollars down the road in our operating budget. This isn't, in my mind, a short-term decision. It's how do we sustain, retain, and hire the best teachers. So all of that to say, I don't think I'm going to support the postponement, because I do think there's a motion on the table that at least allows us to match what the rest of the county employees are getting in terms of retirement. And I will wait to listen to the rest of my colleagues after. Thank you.
So I have one go back. Is there anyone who has not spoken who would like to speak? Ms. Derenak Kovacs.
Well, I just want to say I appreciate, this is a good conversation to have. I appreciate the comments that Ms. Corbett-Sanders has talked about. The chronic underfunding of our system by all three of our funding bodies is how we get to this point. We value our teachers and we value our employees. And then I'm just going to piggyback on what Ms. Huff said. This really is, tonight's conversation is to keep this core benefit intact, and it's for the sustainability of this program over time. I think this is, I've talked to many of you. I hope you know that we're listening and we're working very hard, but we have as a board talked about this for quite over a year now, and I do also believe that there is an option out there that I will be able to support. I do want to just say right now up front that for tonight, I do understand that this isn't something that we want to look at for employees who are currently with us but not vested, and it's something that I would be looking at. Whatever changes we make would be for new hires only. So, but I would not be at this time supporting the motion on the table.
All right, I have two go-backs. Ms. McLaughlin.
So a couple things. First of all, to the question about sustainability that some of my colleagues brought up. As we know right now, FCERS on the county side, ERFC on the school side, there's been no reports of sustainability problems. None. So this notion that we have to be making a decision tonight because we care about you, because we're worried about the sustainability of this great benefit that attracts and retains you to be here, is in my mind a false narrative. And I'm really worried about why my colleagues are wanting to continue the false narrative. The chronic underfunding, of course we're underfunded, but the proposal on tonight that I'm hearing support leaning toward is $2.3 million. That is not even 0.2% of our operating budget. That is not a reason to be voting tonight. What I am concerned that I'm not hearing my colleagues understand is that as of right now, what our school employees pay into this supplemental retirement plan is far higher than what county employees pay into their plan. That right now, they have a rule of 55 and 30 years of service. The plan that a lot of my colleagues seem to want to rally around tonight is going to be the rule of 90. There is no evidence of what the Board of Supervisors are going to do. So if we already have an inequitable approach to our county pension system, which some of our school employees actually are in FCERS. So we don't even have consistent retirement benefit for 100% of our employees. But my goal all along was that just like with annual raises, step increases, COLAs, that there should be parity and equity in what school employees get each year compared to what county employees get each year. This is the exact same thing. We have a unique opportunity because the Board of Supervisors have just made a promise 2 days ago to not only now give us an opportunity to make any potential changes to ERFC most closely align with what the county is going to decide to do in the next year, but we also prevent the fact that we make changes tonight and then they could be making changes that still end up making our employees pay more than their employees will be expected to contribute. And I don't know how that's fair to our employees. We also have the Board of Supervisors modeling best practice, which is to engage key stakeholders, and especially their employees. And I'm not hearing my colleagues understand that we didn't do that for you. And we owe that to you. And I'm not trying to earn any public brownie points here tonight. I genuinely thought when I saw this flurry of my colleagues putting together motions, things we haven't even discussed and engaged with you guys on, why the rush? So I'm going to make one last clarion call. I really am disappointed that if you weren't going to vote in support of the deferment, that you all would at least spoken to why. And maybe you're going to speak to it when you decide what you do support, but I think it's a mistake. And I really think that Mr. Wilson and I were trying to both provide an opportunity here to do the best thing. Anything we do tonight, we are chasing a moving target because the supervisors are very well going to be spending the next year doing a really great job and engaging their employees in the process.
Before I go to more go-backs, I have Ms. Palchik.
Thank you. I will just speak briefly to this amendment. I will not be supporting the delay. While I did bring up the motion to have the initial delay, and I do think that myself included, definitely, there was quite a bit that we needed to get ourselves up to speed and to have more information. I do feel that at this point it is our duty to make a decision based on the information that we have. And I do hope that, as was shared at our budget work session, that we are looking, as Ms. McLaughlin likes to point out, parity with the county. I think on the long term, I'm not sure what form it will take for us to look at how our pension continues to be sustainable. And I will continue to do my research to see what has been done across the county, across the country, to balance the effects, the negative effects on recruiting and retaining employees with the positive effects of bringing our pensions to a continued state, especially pre-crisis levels of continued defined benefit, because in the long term, it is my hope that we can keep that beyond this board and beyond future boards. So that being said on that, there is, I think, enough information for us to make a decision tonight. So I will not be supporting this motion. Thank you.
Mr. Wilson?
Thank you, Madam Chair. The ERFC is a unique benefit to Fairfax County Public School employees. And what I heard tonight were words like, this is happening abruptly. So I know that we internally on the board may have had a series of halting discussions about trying to understand the plan and what the impact would be and the changes. From the community perspective and from the members' perspective of VRFC, it is abrupt. I also heard mentioned that this is a little bit like rearranging the deck chairs. If on the one hand we're going to diminish the ERFC and then talk about pay increases, and it is, I think, it is inconsistent, and I think that analogy of maybe rearranging the deck chairs is apt to what these changes would be. And lastly, the changes that I think the board is heading towards tonight really seem to be a little bit like tinkering, and we can't come back. This is not something that you tinker with. This is a plan that should be stable indefinitely. And so the mere fact that we're talking about changing fundamental aspects of this, such as how the final average is calculated, what year are you able to retire, how the COLA is implemented. These sorts of changes, if the planning is right up front, hopefully you don't ever have to make those kind of changes. And the changes that we're talking about tonight, however, I'm sensing that maybe this board thinks, well, if we don't quite get it right this year, we'll come back to it. And I just think that the advantages of saving a little bit of money this year are far outweighed to taking the time to do this in a way that if we're going to decide to reduce ERFC benefits, we should do it right, and we should do it in concert with the county.
Mrs. Schultz?
So I'm sorry, can I, this has been while It seems like we've been doing this forever. Some of this has been transpiring just recently. Can I ask, and this is a question I sort of asked leading up to today, and I don't know if it's most appropriate to ask to Ms. Michael or Ms. Quinn or actually Mr. Paris or Dr. Lockard. You guys can decide. You can flip a four-sided coin and decide who's going to take this. A few years back, and this is for my colleagues, I'm going to try to analogize this. A few years back, we had a budgetary surprise hit us about a month after we passed a budget in the form of a $7.6 million textbook request. And we were somewhat stunned that it wasn't presented within the context of the budget, and that had we had it at the time, we may have made different choices. And I ask that because it's almost in the obverse that I feel, and I appreciate that Ms. Palchik postponed it, but I'm not exactly sure why we postponed it to this date. I feel like we sort of, in a not particularly eloquent or well-managed previous board meeting, we sort of picked this on the calendar. And I'm wondering if it isn't better for us to do this, and I look at my watch that's not a watch, in about 20 days or so, we're going to be having a budget conversation. I would say, what is the harm in us taking, a little bit of time, not a year. I'm not in favor of a year, and I'll speak to why, but I first want to ask this question. Why can we not consider this change or any change or no change within the full context of the budget conversation we are literally on the brink of having? And so that we can look, just this evening in our work session that preceded this meeting, and oh my gosh, we're into like our 9th hour of meetings or something today already, that there are still moving parts, and each moving part potentially precipitates a different decision by all 12 board members. And in the grand scheme of things, should one or another of these parts fall into place one way or another way, it could inform a decision on the next item. This really is a holistic approach at not just, and this is where I'll separate Mr. Wilson from what you're saying. This isn't about this year. I agree. This is not an attempt to balance this budget, and I spoke very succinctly earlier this evening that this is not about, I'm looking for a way to not impact teachers, but to manage our long-term obligations. And maybe that's a little bit what Ms. Huff was getting to. So why can we not have this conversation holistically with all of the other budget decisions we are on the brink of making? And don't tell me, well, you just need to know now. No, you don't. What's another reason?
So we're trying to flip that.
I took that one off the table. You can't answer that one.
We're trying to flip the four-sided coin. So when we postponed this date, the things that were weighing heavy on our mind in terms of the timing of this, in addition to the budget, were in order to implement the changes to the system by July 1st, right, we need the decision for the vendor to complete the work. That's piece one. Piece two is our actuary is waiting to complete our actuarial evaluation based on any plan changes. And the timing is critical because they have to have that done in order for the financial reports to be done for our external auditors. So that's why when we originally were coming up with a date we could delay it to, this was the absolute latest that we could delay it.
Mrs. Strauss? Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you were finished.
Hold on. I just got an answer. So, absolute latest is it? Is this a definitive? I mean, are we at brinksmanship? If we don't make a decision tonight, then, everything, then everything grinds to a halt. I mean, tell me that that's the fact. Because I will say, I was particularly frustrated on Monday about the discussion about the actuarial valuation of the unfunded liability and the fact that we were spending time talking about an unfunded liability amount that's at least 16 months old. I'm not happy with that. I am overtly displeased with the fact that we're not talking about an unfunded liability that's well north of $800 million. It's not $693 million. And so that's the part, Mr. Wilson and Ms. McLaughlin, that looms for me. You can proclaim it's not, disastrous, but in another 15 months, you take a $810 or $830 million unfunded liability that we're having enough difficulty resolving now, and if we don't solve it for another 12 to 15 months, what's it going to be then? Are we going to be approximating $1 billion unfunded liability? I can't do that to employees. There are states that go bankrupt over pension systems, and part of our budget problem later, in 25 days, is a VRS back payment because we're having to come bring VRS up to a greater degree of funding to keep it not only solvent, but to make sure that it's there for employees, that the promise that we've made to employees is there to pay out. So tell me it's an indefatigable, I'm not going to say red line, but it's a red line. I said it. It's a red line?
It is.
All right.
All right, I have Mrs. Strauss, and then I will take a turn, and then we have Mrs. Huff.
Thank you. I will look forward, actually, to Ms. Hines' amendment, which I will be supporting, and there's a follow-on motion from Ms. Schultz that I will also be supporting. I will not support the delay. I believe that a defined benefit pension plan is appropriate for the profession of educators. There's a lot of pressure these days for us to go back to 401ks. That's not appropriate for the education profession. People go into teaching for the love of children, for the passion of teaching. Yes, it is not a highly paid profession, and it is important that we provide as best we can opportunities to save and invest for retirement. ERFC was invented in 1973 by the Board of Supervisors, and it was originally intended to be a supplement to Social Security. And it was originally intended to then be phased out once people were of Social Security age. There have been a number of changes over time with the ERFC. One was some years ago when it was turned into a more traditional defined benefit. It's no longer a supplement to Social Security where it basically then declines after Social Security age. Obviously, the Social Security retirement age has changed over time. VRS has changed over time. The funded capacity right now of ERFC is about 76%. We have made good progress since the recession, which is a good thing. And the advice that we are hearing is that going forward, if we are wise and our trustees are wise, hopefully we will continue to keep this pension plan robust. But it is important that we look to the future as well so that we can sustain a defined benefit pension plan over time. I do support whatever changes we make, that it only be for new hires. I think we've all heard everybody. There is a concern to break promises for people who are already employees here. People are living longer. The average retirement age now in Fairfax County is 62. I am ready to vote on some modest plan changes tonight. It is important that we also work with the Board of Supervisors next year. They are looking at their plans. Their plan is quite different than ours. They have several plans. We also, when VRS and the General Assembly made changes in VRS, how it was going to be funded, in our obligation and the employee's obligation to VRS, there were changes again made in the amount of contribution that both the employer and the employee put in. So there have been changes over time. But again, with the viewpoint of trying to keep this pension fund a defined benefit and strong so that it is there when everybody retires. It is too bad that we are not funded better by our funding sources. A lot of us were very sad when we lost the meals tax. And the Board of Supervisors did not choose to increase the tax rate. But I am looking at the modest changes in the ERFC not just as something to balance this year, but it is for the long-term health of a defined benefit plan. This plan currently is funded at about a 76%. I remember at one time it was funded 110%. Very, very healthy. And it is important that we continue to keep an eye on our ability to sustain this over time. We don't want to be in the position, the irresponsible decision that we have seen in some jurisdictions where their pension funds went bankrupt. And they actually had to take back money from people who are retired. We have watched that in private industry, and that's a terrible thing to do to your employees. So we have to be responsible, invest wisely, be true to our employees, and also respond to changes in the reality of society. So for that reason, I will be supporting later some adjustments to what's on the table, but I am ready to vote tonight. We do have to have everything in place. If there are changes, they need to be there and worked on for new hires so that as we hire people, we know that we are offering the kind of a benefit package so that we know what we're going to hire. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll take a turn on this particular motion. I will not be supporting a year delay in making some decisions on the ERFC. We have, as we all know, been working on this for many, many months. We've had quite a few work sessions on it and a considerable amount of reports and discussions and opportunities to ask any questions that we had and give full consideration to the various options that have been put in front of us. We, as Mrs. Strauss said, we need to be sure that we keep the pension plan as strong as we can so it doesn't go down the road that some other pension plans have. And I don't see that delaying decisions on what we think we might be able to do is going to make any of this any easier. So if this motion doesn't pass, then I'll be speaking later about Mrs. Hines' amendment, which I do support as well. But at this time, it may be, well, we'll see if this motion passes or not, but I will not be supporting it. I have two more go-backs. Mrs. Hoff.
Thank you. Just a quick go back. I wanted to be clear because we've used these words sustainability, and I think an important point that I don't want to be lost is when I was talking about sustainability, I'm talking about sustainability of our operating fund. The solvency of the fund is something different, but the sustainability of the dollars that we have are being impacted by the fund itself. And as an example, the contribution last year was 5.6% by the employer, FCPS, and is going up to 6.4%, which is an $11 million take from the operating fund. It's projected to maybe go up to 7%. Every percent increase is about $14 million. So that's where we have an honest discussion about sustainability, and I think it's fair to say. And then I'm going to comment on the deck chairs, because I think it's quite valid. Per that chart that shows where FCPS is compared to the market, we have the right amount of deck chairs. They're in the wrong place. And that's according to the employees themselves who are saying that we're not retaining, we're not hiring, and that they're leaving to other school districts. So if the amount is right, but it's in the wrong place, we do need to address that. So I did want to address that and to go back.
Mr. Wilson.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I'll be brief. But I did want to ask a couple of questions following in the shoes of Ms. Schultz, because I think one thing that has been brought up by several of the members here is both the condition of the ERFC, and I think Ms. Huff mentioned the solvency and its over time, but also its impact on our operating budget annually. And although we have talked as a board for quite a while, and I have spent my questions trying to actually drill down on both of those questions to see what is the truth there. And so I don't think I've heard that there's an issue with solvency of the fund. And I think I see at least 4 trustees here tonight. So perhaps we could just confirm that there is no issue with solvency of the fund.
Dr. Lockhart, would you like to ask one of the board members to
maybe
speak?
Jean Carr could.
Yes, the funded ratio at 76% is about average of the speaker that referred to the survey of plans across the country. That's about the average funded percentage across the country of public pension plans.
Okay.
So,
yeah, and that's, I think, reflects what we were also briefed in our sessions.
That's correct.
With the panel. So that leaves the question of the impact on our operating budget each year. And it's, I think, not lost on any of the school board members that we have Ms. Quinn and Ms. Michaels as trustees of ERFC, who each year look and understand better than anyone what the impact is going to be on the operating budget of our school system. And that's why I started by asking, did the trustees vote to recommend these changes? And again, I don't think they have recommended these changes. I think these changes, I'm not sure exactly where they emanated from, but they should come from a recommendation by the trustees for ERFC. They are charged with managing and directing the operations of the fund. And if the school board thinks, well, they're asking for too much money this year in operating expenses, the school board should then turn around and direct Jean Carr to go back to the trustees and say, next year, we got to work something out, and you need to tell us from a fund perspective what you need to do to reduce the burden on the school's operating budget annually. And so we've kind of gone about it backwards and sort of been fumbling along, which I think is part of why the fruitfulness of our discussions has been somewhat obscured. So the decision to modify the plan tonight, and it's been mentioned that people support Mrs. Schultz's follow-on motion, but I think the decision to amend the plan tonight largely preempts the discussions that working jointly with the county to review pension plans, including ERFC, after we decide. And in essence, I think we make the decision and then we consult. And I just really am uncomfortable doing that, and I guess there's just no way I can support making these plan changes that are proposed.
Ms. McLaughlin?
Just to clarify a little bit more about what Mr. Wilson said before we actually vote. Those of you listening to this board dialogue have heard people saying they're looking forward to supporting Ms. Schultz's follow-on motion, which says, I move to establish a joint pension work group with the Board of Supervisors to review and evaluate county and school pension plans. I fully support it. That's what my defer to the motion is about. What I'm not sure my colleagues understand, but I know from talking to our staff before I fashioned my motions earlier today, is you can't keep changing these plans every year. Ms. Strauss is correct. Changes over time happen. But there are administrative costs every time you then create another version of this plan for a portion of your employees. And so if my colleagues like and agree with Ms. Schultz's motion, then the point is to vote for my motion on the table right now, because it does allow us to create that joint pension working group with the Board of Supervisors. It does allow us to evaluate what we currently require of our employees to pay into, what they require them to pay into, how long it is then paid out to them, and how long we pay out to all of you. And also, we're looking at the portion you contribute. It's interesting to me because they also want to talk about how long you have to work before you can draw on it. If we make these decisions tonight, the moving target is we have no idea what the Board of Supervisors does. Ms. Schultz worries about putting this off indefinitely. Ms. Palchik worries about putting it off indefinitely. That's not what this motion is. It says the Board of Supervisors told us 48 hours ago they're finally committed to come to the table and look at this thing. Why would we miss the opportunity to do this thoughtfully, consistently, and not have to miss the chance to make sure there's equity and parity in the plans that we offer our employees? I'm not sure why this became so complicated of a motion for people to grasp and understand, but voting this down and voting for a change tonight, you can't go and reopen this next year, and Ms. Schultz's motion is just moot. There's no purpose to it.
All right. I have a go back by Ms. Derenak Kopex, and I hope we can conclude our discussions fairly soon so we can take a vote on this motion and then decide where we are. Ms. Derenak Kopex?
Yes, I just want to point out to my colleagues, if you do not recall that in November of last year, there was a joint budget work group that was convened, and then we as a board in our last joint meeting prior to the last conversation we had prior to the Board of Supervisors setting the tax rate, there was a working group set up. And this budget work group is going to be the chairman of the Board of Supervisors, the county budget chair, the school board chair, and whomever sits in the budget chair position. This working group, rather than having another group, could very easily serve as looking at pensions as part of this. And so I was so busy having conversations today with so many people that were calling me. I'm just now looking at Ms. Schultz's, who is listed last on here as far as that group. So I want to say that there already is something. There's already been conversation about this and where we are. So I just want to be certain that my colleagues understand that, and we can speak further to it. And I'll ask staff at that point when Ms. Schultz's amendment is up to talk specifically about where you are, what you're doing. There were extensive work plans to our joint boards presented during that. Do you remember what date it was, Ms. Michael? It was, wasn't it?
I believe we shared the timeline of our overlapping budget calendars with all of the future meeting dates at our February work session.
Yes, so it was February. It wasn't that long ago. And again, it's a working document that can be modified. So I want to speak to that later, but I just wanted to point that out to my colleagues now so you have some time if you want to think on that. Thank you.
All right. Do any other board members wish to speak? Ms. Corbett-Sanders?
And I don't know, Dr. Lockhart, I'll let you answer this, or if you want to have someone on your staff answer it. But with the call for an additional infusion of funds into the ERFC this year, if we don't put that in, the funds in, or if we don't change the ERFC this year and we wait a year, does the amount of an infusion of funds that is required by the actuaries, does that increase? If we don't fund it this year?
Yes, that'll increase the following year. That would be determined by the actuaries. I can't tell you how much because all the assumptions will be put back together before the next valuation is complete. And then your annual required contribution will be calculated after the valuation is complete.
So it continues to draw down the funds available for operating the rest of the system if we don't have a way of infusing it.
Because you're also losing a potential year of investment earnings on those funds as well. So there's a lot of different calculations that have to go into those actuaries' valuations.
Great, thank you.
All right, the motion is to defer consideration of ERFC plan changes to no later than May 24th, 2018. Deferring consideration of plan changes will provide time for the school board and the Board of Supervisors to work together in developing any proposed pension plan changes for inclusion in their respective FY 2019 budgets. All those in favor? McLaughlin and Wilson. All those opposed? Hines, Palchek, Huff, Schultz, Corbett, Sanders, Strauss, Evans, Moon, Daranack, Kofax, and McElveen. That motion fails.
Madam Chair, I would move that the board adjourn to go into closed session to consult with counsel regarding the Attorney General letter written in 2014 that has applicability.
Who seconded? Mrs. Schultz seconded. All right. Mr. Wilson, would you like to speak to your motion?
Just very briefly, there's an Attorney General opinion that was written by Mark Herring that has applicability to the decisions that affect changes to retirement plans, and I would like to have advice of our counsel before we make any decision on it.
Mrs. Schultz?
I found out about this through members of the community, and I think I can't imagine that it would be a long conversation, but I do think it's the duty of the board to understand the legal position that it is, considering that there is an existing Attorney General opinion out there about potential legal obligations or lack thereof on the part of the board, and I think it's our duty to just at least have a discussion.
Ms. Hines?
Yeah, I noticed that back and forth today as well in the emails. And Mr. Foster made clear that he was aware of that Attorney General opinion, and he gave us pretty succinct and very clear advice today, during the day. And that was, I really don't think that a closed meeting conversation could possibly add much to it. It was very clear. So I feel like I have the advice, the legal advice that I need to go forward tonight. So I will not be supporting the motion.
All right, I see no other hands, so the motion is on
Madam Chair.
Mr. Moon?
I'm going to support the motion to go into closed meeting. I did receive the same Attorney General's opinion earlier today. We all got the same time. It's a pretty late stage. I read it. I think I have my own interpretation of the Attorney General's opinion, and which was subsequently pretty much confirmed by our division counsel's advice to us. But at the same time, some board members may have questions. So I wanna just respect the rights of some of my colleagues who wanna ask. But at the same time, I don't wanna spend too much time in the closed meeting fully knowing what's ahead of us. So, but I will support the motion.
Ms. Daranack, Kovacs?
I'll too be supporting it for the reasons outlined by Mr. Moon. I have some questions. Thank you.
I also will be supporting it. I don't actually feel that I need more legal advice than we received already, but if it gives our colleagues comfort, then as long as we can be brief, I'll support it. Ms. McLaughlin?
I will support this motion, especially because it is my understanding and hearing from other key stakeholders that the county attorney has a different opinion. And so if the county attorney has a different opinion from our general counsel, then I think we need to figure out why that's the case.
Mr. McElveen?
Madam Chair, understanding that we have other legal counsel joining us at 10 o'clock, would this mean that the closed meeting would continue through that? And what point would we come back out?
Actually, to go into closed meeting, we would need to make, Madam Clerk, would we need a separate motion? I believe we would, beyond what we just did. Would you please draft that for us if, in case this motion passes, because then we would have to do that. The other one, we've already taken care of, the one that's going to be late tonight. And I would urge people to remember that we do have a lengthy discussion to have later tonight.
Well, Madam Chair, my point is that we have other counsel joining us, and knowing that we're incurring legal fees for that, my advocacy would be we just continue through closed meeting to hear both of these issues.
Continue through closed meeting?
We have an additional closed meeting.
I second that. I second that.
I'm sorry if I'm not being clear.
I'm sorry, Mr. McElveen, I'm not understanding you.
Yeah, so at the conclusion of the regular business meeting, we were planned to have a closed meeting, correct, with external legal counsel.
Right, but we need to
And knowing that it's now 9:30.
Yes.
And this meeting would probably lead up into that, why don't we just continue the closed meeting?
All right, I've got a lot of lights. Ms. Corbett-Sanders.
Given the recommendation of my colleague, Mr. McElveen, if we decide to do that while the closed meeting session is being drafted or the verbiage for it, could we go ahead and do the consent agenda and the new business, then go into closed session and come back and complete the ERFC discussion?
Well, if we're going to do this, we need to go into closed session for the one item that Mr. Wilson has made the motion for. If this passes, and the consent agenda and the new business only takes a minute.
Madam
of
Chair,
reading, so.
that's the motion I understood, I seconded, and that's the motion that I support. I don't think it's going to take that long, and frankly, I would like to respect the members of the public who are either watching or have made time to come here tonight. And I think excusing ourselves into an extended closed session that has multiple purposes is not appropriate.
I agree, and we need to finish up the work on the agenda. So with that, Ms. McLaughlin, did you have a follow-up?
I was just going to echo what Ms. Schultz said. I mean, I understand Mr. McElveen wanting to be as fiscally prudent as possible, so we'll make this short. But no, the audience is here waiting for us to make a decision, and that closed session for our other matter is not going to be fast.
All right. So with that, the motion is to go into closed session for what we hope is a brief consultation with our division counsel. All those in favor, raise your hand. Palchik, Schultz, Corbett-Sanders, Strauss, Evans, Moon, McLaughlin, Wilson, Derenak Koufax. All those opposed, Hines and McElveen. That motion passes. Madam Clerk, do we have a motion to go into closed? I'm sorry? Oh, is it? Oh, just read the, well, let's see.
Can I make a motion?
I think I made the motion to go in closed session. That was my motion.
All right. Well, actually, so. All right. The board will now make a motion to go into closed meeting to consult with legal counsel regarding specific legal matters and retirement plans regarding the provision of, legal matters requiring the provision of legal counsel by such counsel pursuant to Section 2.2-3711A7 of the Code of Virginia. Do I have a motion? Mr. Wilson? Moved by Mr. Wilson. Do I have a second? Seconded by Mrs. Schultz. All those in favor, please raise your hand. Okay, that's Palchik, Huff, Schultz, Corbett-Sanders, Strauss, Evans, Moon, McLaughlin, Wilson, Derenak Koufax. All those opposed? Hines and McElveen. That motion passes. We're in closed session.